Russian occupiers are losing up to 35 air defense systems monthly, and up to a third of them are in occupied Crimea. This was written for the website Obozrevatel by the columnist of the group Information Resistance, Alexander Kovalenko. They urgently need to compensate for these losses on the Crimean peninsula. And Russia currently has virtually no means of compensating for air defense losses through production, and it has to do so exclusively by transferring them from other positional areas, thus exposing the airspace in the areas of the mainland Ukraine, but more often over Russia itself, he wrote. According to his information, to cover the airspace, the Russian occupiers deployed the 31st Air Defense Division in Crimea, consisting of the 12th and 18th Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiments, as well as the 3rd Radio Technical Regiment in Tarkhankut. He concluded that Crimea, with an area of just over 26,000 square kilometers, is turning into a second Chernobaevka for Russian air defense, and he explained why. The Crimean air defense is much more vulnerable to threats from mainland Ukraine than, for example, the one deployed on mainland Russia. This is because Russian anti-aircraft missile regiments are equipped primarily with 92N2E sector radars, which are inadequate in terms of recording and tracking small-sized targets. For such purposes, 91N6E circular view radars are used, and Russian troops have an acute shortage of them. Attempts to compensate for this shortage with Nebo-M and Kasta-2E2 end with the fairly rapid destruction of these radars, which forces them to be compensated for in an emergency mode by transferring them from other areas. Kovalenko writes that the Russians cannot stop covering Crimea, which is an important logistical hub for them and a location for a large number of military facilities. But they cannot do this effectively, either physically or technologically. So it turns out that the Crimean peninsula is turning into another Chernobaevka for the ROV. True, it is much larger in area, but absolutely similar in essence. The fatal feature of Crimea for the Russians is that it is a completely closed area. That is, all the positional areas are known in advance, both the locations that are most conducive to the deployment of air defense systems and vice versa. In essence, the ROV in Crimea is limited by the borders of the peninsula itself. He concluded, "Let us recall that a small airfield near Kherson became famous after the Russians lost a large number of personnel and equipment there during the occupation. Despite the strikes of the Ukrainian armed forces, the occupiers continued to use the airfield for basing. They created warehouses there, which were destroyed more than 20 times by strikes of the Ukrainian defense forces. Traces of these strikes could be seen after the deoccupation of Chernobaevka."
The United States and the European Union announced a trade framework Sunday after a meeting between President Donald Trump and European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen. This is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade. "It's a giant deal with lots of countries," Trump said after the talks at his golf course resort near Turnberry, Scotland. According to Associated Press, for months, he has threatened most of the world with steep tariffs in hopes of shrinking large U.S. trade deficits with many key trading partners. The US and EU seemed close to a deal earlier this month to ease the prospect of dueling tariffs, but Trump instead threatened a 30% tariff rate. The agreement comes before a Trump administration deadline to impose tariffs on Friday. "We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world, and it's a big deal. It's a huge deal," von der Leyen said.
Thank you very much. So we have good news. We've reached a deal. It's a good deal for everybody, I believe. And I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
It is.
It's a giant deal with lots of countries. So we're going to do the following. The European Union is going to agree to purchase from the United States $750 billion worth of energy. $750 billion worth of energy. They are going to agree to invest into the United States $600 billion more than they're investing already. So they're investing a large amount of money. You know what that amount of money is. It's very substantial, but they're going to invest an additional $600 billion. They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor. Opening up their countries, all of the countries will be opened up to trade with the United States at zero tariff. And they're agreeing to purchase a vast amount of military equipment. We don't know what that number is, but we are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
We have a deal. We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. It's 15% tariffs across the board, all inclusive. The investments Mr. President just described, that are going to go to the United States and the purchases over there. Indeed, basically the European market is open. It's 450 million people. So it's a good deal. It's a huge deal. Yeah. It was tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides. So again, congratulations and many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ukrainian forces have eliminated a Russian colonel in Kharkiv region, the Operational Strategic Group of Forces, Kortitsia, reported on July 26. According to operational information, troops from Ukraine's defense forces destroyed Colonel Lebedev, commander of the 83rd Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 69th Motorized Rifle Division of the Russian Army, who was leading assault operations in the Velikoburlik direction, the report stated. Lebedov is not the first senior Russian military official killed in the war in Ukraine. Earlier in July, the Ukrainian armed forces eliminated the command of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Russian Pacific Fleet. At the same time, Major General Mikhail Gudkov, Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy, who had previously commanded the 155th Brigade, was also killed. Additionally, on June 30, Colonel Ruslan Goryakin, Chief of Staff of Russia's 8th Guards Army, was eliminated during a missile strike in eastern Donetsk region. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed on Friday that his army was facing fierce fighting around the embattled city of Pokrovsk in eastern Donetsk region, where Russian troops have been trying to advance for months. In his nightly address, Zelensky said, with reference to Ukraine's top commander, Oleksandr Syrsky, that the situation around Pokrovsk was the current focal point of attention in the war. All operational directions were covered, with particular focus on Pokrovsk. It receives the most attention, Zelensky stated. In a separate update on Telegram channel, Syrsky identified Pokrovsk and 5 other zones as some of the most challenging areas along the 1,000-kilometer front line. The Russian Federation is paying a high price for its attempted summer offensive, Syrsky wrote. Russian troops have been trying for months to advance on Pokrovsk, a strategic transport hub with a pre-war population of around 60,000, most of whom have since been evacuated. Back in May, Syrsky reported that Ukrainian forces had managed to stabilize the situation near the town, which is a strategic hub and had a pre-war population of 60,000. It should be noted that on Thursday, Russia's defense ministry announced the capture of 2 villages on either side of Pokrovsk, Zverov to the west and Novoekonomik to the east. A third village near the city, Novodorets, was declared by Moscow to be captured earlier in the week. Kiev has not commented on Russian reports about the capture of the 2 villages by Russian troops. However, General Staff of Ukraine's military said the villages Zverov and Novoekonomik were in areas where Russian troops were trying to penetrate Ukrainian defenses.